Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Radio Redux. And it's another one of those shows. Yes, I, under cover of darkness, have sneaked into the other podcast and pulled out of there 3 individuals who normally only get together once a year, actually, at the end of the year for their top games of said year. But they're here now, and they're here. We're going to have a discussion about games because, you know, it's that kind of podcast. I have with me a ShadowFox.
Ahoy, hoy.
An Urtheart.
Yarg.
And it's been a little while since he's been on Radio Redux, and we're glad to have him back, as always. He is the irrepressible Turbo.
Greetings, everyone.
Absolutely. Now, Urtheart is the host for these type of discussions, so with the show suitably introduced, and just before a little bit of music, which you'll probably no doubt hear, it's over to him for today's discussion.
Yes, well, normally when I have these other 2 wise men with me, namely ShadowFox and Turbo, we're normally discussing the greatest games of the year, but it's a little bit early for that. We're recording this in the middle of summer.
We're actually halfway through the year rather than at the end of the year. It's pretty much...
Granted, with us recording it halfway through the year, I think we still got a good plethora of contenders for Game of the Year anyway.
I don't have...
But we'll get into that at the end of the year. You'll find out how it all pans out.
I think the second half of this year is what I'm looking forward to most.
Yeah, I don't have 5 games for this year yet. But I thought, well, we're always just looking at the year. Why don't we look at something a bit longer? You know, like the greatest games of all time. And then we kind of got into discussions about, kind of not sure I can categorize my top 5 games. I can, because I've had my list for a couple of years now, but...
Urtheart hates every single game that's ever come out since 2001, everybody.
I need to check what the most recent game on the list is, actually.
I did do a check of the games I'll be talking about today, and there's not a new one on there for the past decade or so.
Yeah, I would... Well, actually, I've pretty much got you all beat myself, because the youngest game that I have in my list is... what was it? From 2002.
One of my games is technically post 2006. So, but yeah, so we're going to at least discuss 5 games that we love each, in some capacity or form. I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This isn't a be all end all kind of like listings from all of us. These are just our personal favorite games of all time that we consider as the all-time greats.
Yes,
from that was given to us by the industry.
It's the ones that are to us, though. It's as opposed. It's.
There'll be a lot of personal preferences here. Not necessarily. I can definitely say one of the games is definitely not a good game at the moment. But
actually, with you, that could be several.
There could be several. But
in this day and age, it could be anything, really, because that's how the live model is.
Also be extremely relevant. Let's just say the first 2 games are going to pick. I'm going to make sure are out on the first...
This very much depends upon when this show comes out. You do realise it's relevant.
This is true.
It will, yeah, it's true. But it'll be the most relevant if I talk about them. These ones first.
Okay.
That's fair. I guess, so, I mean, I don't know if you guys had any method to your madness. Mine are literally what I consider the 5 games I enjoy the most, that I want to go back and play all the time, and that have kind of shaped the way I think about games. I think is probably the best description I can give.
That's where I've gone in terms of narrowing down, because all of us had, like, apart from you with your chiseled in granite from top of a mountain delivered by Moses on tablets.
You've heard my top 5 down in Portsmouth at some point.
No. You say tablets. You really meant Steam Decks.
I wish I had a Steam Deck.
They were just engraved on the back of an iPad. by a customization service. But yeah, we're all in that. I think we've got huge lists, and yeah, it's all down to that. What Urtheart said, like the preferences, really.
And obviously,
if you don't want bias, you're in the wrong place. This is
It'll-
all
oh,
about
yes.
bias.
It'll also depend on the phase of the moon and whether Jupiter is in alignment,
Oh,
depending
but
on what the
I will
favourite
say-
game is.
my number 5 and my number 6 are very, very close. And I've actually picked my number 5 based on this is the one people can actually play, whereas the number 6 choice would be, yeah, you can't get this anymore. Out of my list, there's only one game on it that you can't get anymore, at least. So,
Also, folks, we're specifically not going to give you any honourable mentions. Again, that's because our lists are so big, we can come back to this topic at a later date. So,
True.
so we're keeping them.
there's going to be one game of mine that might have a exception to the rule, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
From 16-bit classics to modern epics and everything in between. Join us for more great gaming tunes here on Radio Redux.
And as such, shall I start then, gentlemen?
By all means.
Please do.
Yep.
So, my number 5 is a game in a very long-running franchise. In fact, it's recently had its 16th mainline installment recently. So that is Final Fantasy. But which Final Fantasy game is it? Does anyone want to have a quick
9.
guess? Yeah, Turbo's already got it on the head.
It's like I know that from
Okay,
just like I know fine how like everyone normally when it's like Final Fantasy, it's always it's either gotta be 6, 7, or 9, and most of the time, a lot of people in recent years have been talking about 9 being the greatest of all time. There you get some people who were obviously a lot younger saying that 10 is the best in the series,
and I can perfectly understand that, to be fair.
Yeah, or 14 if you're 14 if you're an MMO nut.
And to be fair, 14 I think is a good shout. 14 is one of the few games that have been rising higher and higher on my top 50 list. But yeah, Final Fantasy 9. So to be fair, Final Fantasy 9 I played when it originally came out. So I have been a fan of it since it came out, but I did play 7 and 8 before it as well. But for me, there's a couple of things that make Final Fantasy 9 really solidify its place in my top 5. First of all, I think it's actually the most beginner-friendly of the Final Fantasies. 10 can kind of argue that as well, but the thing with 9 is there's not that much character customization. All of the characters have specialized skills that you utilize, and most of the time you don't get to pick which characters you are until halfway through the game, almost. So it's much easier to go, hey, here's how you get used to magic users, and to thieves, and to white mages, etc., etc. But I love the overall... I think the story is amazing. I love the fact that every character has their own story as well as this overarching story. The graphics, because it's slightly more cartoony, hold up a little better than Final Fantasy VII's blocky style and Final Fantasy VIII trying to be a bit too realistic and looking a bit like garbage these days. And there's plenty of variety and depth in the game. There's the Chocobo stuff. There's the card game within the game, which is a whole other thing, although people still prefer Final Fantasy VIII's card game, and that's fine. But yeah, overall, it's one of the games that I think is just... It is one of the best Final Fantasy, full stop. I think it has one of the best... Because it has the best story, and because it's so user-friendly, I think it's much easier to get into. It's much easier to just enjoy again. And I've played it through about 3 or 4 times at this point. I still haven't done everything in the game. There are some, especially with the recent re-releases, some ridiculously hard achievements and things to do in the game. I've never done the speed run to get the most powerful weapon, because you skip a load of the game that I enjoy. I've never actually beaten the super boss in that game, Ozma. So that's something I have to go back and do. And of course, I've never got the Jump Rope King achievement, because why? Why would you ever do that? But every Final Fantasy game has those kind of things. I've never beaten the super bosses in 10, so, you know. But I still love 9. 9's the one I go back to. I love the way the Moogles are portrayed in it. Vivi is definitely one of my favourite characters in all the games. I like the fact that Zidane's not a moody teenager. He's upbeat, and he kind of is the Rock everyone looks to, because he's upbeat and self-confident. Some of the later characters they introduce, especially Armament, I think it's called, are a bit, who cares? Quina is also another stand-up favourite, because, you know, the Blue Mage job has always been a bit of a weird one, but a Blue Mage that learns stuff by eating enemies is just fun. So yeah, Final Fantasy IX. I mean, it may be quite a basic choice, although 9 tends to come after 6 and 7, I think, in the rankings. But yeah, 9 has plenty of love. If the rumours of a remake come out, I'll be more than happy for it. But, you know, you can still get 9 on pretty much everything under the sun at the moment that's out. It's definitely on Steam. It's definitely on PlayStation, Xbox and Switch. So this is one you can enjoy. If you've never played a Final Fantasy game before, this is genuinely the one I would recommend starting with. Yeah, what more can I say? Unless you guys had questions.
Well, I've got the game kind of like readied for the 100 games bucket list that I have. So I got the Switch version ready for whenever that gets redeemed. Although that's going to be for a while away now, with what I'm currently doing on my Twitch channel, which you can follow me at twitch.tv/TurboDrive Live. Plug. But no, I totally understand, because I've been seeing a lot of people's kind of like admiration for 9 shine more in recent years over the likes of 6 and 7, which have always been the pinnacle of the old school, like proper old school SNES Final Fantasy, and then 3D Final Fantasy.
Don't get me wrong, both of the games,
or PlayStation Final Fantasy.
I've not played 6 all the way through, so I can't really comment on that one. 7 I have, and I've completed several times as well. And it is a good game. But the thing that I think that I would recommend 9 over 7 is because the whole materia system in 7 was confusing to me as a child, and it has a lot of nuances in it. Whereas Final Fantasy 9, you don't have to worry about that. It's everyone has their skills, and yeah, they can learn abilities and stuff off equipment, but you don't need to worry about that so much as, no, Vivi's the one that casts magic. Zidane is the one that nicks stuff. That, you know, it's very clear cut. You know what each character does. You know what you need to give them to make them better.
I'll also give this to Final Fantasy IX. It is the more fantasy in design than its contemporaries, up until recently, where 16 brought more fantasy back into the series, rather than, because I know fantasy can be interpreted in many ways, but how I see fantasy, I see as magic, magic and adventure, kind of like sword, sorcery, kind of like thing, kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, effectively. And that's how I see 9 being more fantasy than any other entry in the series.
I think that was its purpose as well.
Yeah, and I think that helps bear because it gives a lasting more. It's like character design is obviously a lasting appeal to a game. If the character design is great and it's memorable, then it's got to be remembered, a lot longer than your generic first-person shooter and whatnot. And because I've seen the character designs, I've seen the Dark Mage that is played. He's pretty iconic in his own right, based on his design alone. I don't know the name of the character, but I can visualize what it is.
He's called Vivi.
He's a guy in a robe, and it's darkened out, and you could just see his eyes, glowing. And it's a bold kind of like character design. So I can totally give props to the team behind Final Fantasy IX to actually giving that entry a really recognizable kind of like design,
and that goes for all the characters
to make it stand out from the rest of the series.
What's quite nice is all the characters have their individual profiles as well. Again, I look forward to when you get to meet Quina Quayle, because it is interesting, and I have to use the term "it" because no one knows what its gender is, even in game.
Oh well, and it's like and you know me, whenever it's a game that doesn't have any voice acting in it, I'm gonna be voicing all the characters, so that's gonna be interesting how to voice it all.
I think the only one that's ever had a voice is Zidane and Vivi, because Vivi is in Kingdom Hearts. So
fair dues.
But yes, so yeah, my number 5. Mine are in order from 5 to 1. So yeah, Final Fantasy IX is my number 5.
that goes to me then. With my list is not in any particular order, but I'll go with the first one that I have on my list here, and we went to one RPG series to another. It's technically RPG, but it's like action RPG, and it was actually very last minute of which one, because I'm doing a one per franchise rule, essentially, where I can't just put multiple same games from the same franchise, coming in. And I really thought about it, and I was like, okay, and the recent one just came out not too long ago, and I thought, oh, but I like this one better. Oh wait, which one actually got me into it more, or into the series more? And then I thought, oh, it has to be this one, because this was the one that I loved playing the most back in the day, and in my opinion, it still holds up today. And that's going to be The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, that's fair.
This game is iconic, plain and simple. It was the first 3D Zelda to be, showcased on a new system, on like the N64 and whatnot. And granted, I didn't own a N64, but I was able to kind of like borrow an N64 for a while, and I got to play it and got all the way through it. And then eventually, with future re-releases and even the 3DS remake for it, gave me more admiration to kind of like enjoy it more. And I like, if you sat me down and say, okay, which Zelda game do you want to play? I would always play Ocarina of Time over any of the other entries. Even though because the other game that I did have for this list for today was Breath of the Wild. But I feel as though I can't sit down and do everything in Breath of the Wild. Even though I've just, I did do a 100% playthrough of that in my own time. But the doing the whole 100% stuff in Breath of the Wild is more of a chore than it is fun. Me, with Ocarina of Time, I find that be more fun to me by going through this. Even though it's very linear, it is effectively very linear, but it's still fun. And even then, like, I can probably go through it and I'll probably find something new that I never knew about whatsoever. I have done with some of these games in years, where I've gone back to them and go, oh, I don't remember that. So, yeah. But no, Ocarina of Time, there's not much else I could say. It's pardon the pun, a legendary title in the industry, where it's introduced so many things. The Z targeting system was a factor for many gaming designs going forward, for locking onto enemies and stuff like that. And the lore of the series pretty much expanding more from that entry alone, with the whole, kind of like multiple timeline kind of like theories and stuff like that. That is pretty much the game that kind of like opened the floodgates to theories, I feel as though.
To the Zelda theories?
Yeah, the multiple timeline theories of Zelda and whatnot.
It opened the floodgates, Nintendo desperately trying to make sense of what they've just done.
Oh, them definitely. Them trying to hold back the raging tides.
Yeah, I guess.
Sure,
So, well, you see, there's 3 timelines. Where's the third one? It's like,
it depends on how well you did in this game.
Yeah,
yeah.
It very much depends. Did you win? Well, not necessarily. Depends upon this coin flip.
I'm very much in the camp that I prefer the 3DS version of the game. But I will say that one thing I would like to do, and I think it might be on Kev's bucket list at some point as well, is try the randomizer for the game.
There's at least 2 Zelda games which are down on the on to do a race or randomizer for it. Ocarina is in the conversation. I don't want to mention other Zelda games unless they come up in someone's list at a later point. But I mean, Turbo made a great point in that Ocarina is you have games within a series which then transform the series, and we just had Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy VII is one of those.
Oh god,
it transforms the series. Then there are games that transform the genre that they're in, outside of the series, the actual genre itself, and Ocarina of Time is one of those. But there are also games, rare games, not rare games necessarily, but special games which not just change the genre, not just change the series, but actually change gaming. Video games itself that set a bar for everything else around it, and Ocarina of Time is one of those very rare, very special titles.
I mean, Ocarina of Time is still, by quite a lot of people, still considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest game of all time. It's still number 1 or 2 of most lists, and usually these days, if it's beaten by anything, it's beaten by Breath of the Wild. So,
which is interesting,
effectively.
But I find it very interesting as well what you said, Turbo, about Breath of the Wild being a chore at times. And there is, I think, a possibility of a discussion for a later date as to, and this goes with Tears of the Kingdom as well.
Oh yes,
is that have some games become too big for their own good?
I saw an article earlier, and it was talking about how a bunch of ex-devs from certain studios were gathering together, and they said they're going to make the next 10,000-hour game. And all I'm thinking is, I'm not going to put 10,000 hours into any game you make. That is too much game. And it's a problem that people are worried about with Starbound, the new Bethesda one.
Yeah,
big galaxy, all these planets. Apparently, 10% have stuff on them. Why have the other 90% if there's nothing to do there?
90% of your time, you're going to arrive at a destination and be disappointed.
Because the thing is, like with games we play multiplayer, half of the enjoyment is your friends, and that can elevate a game. But you still have to have the content underneath it to keep it going, basically, because we'll just move on to other games we can play as friends.
And that's and so when you've got a single player experience, stuff like the lore and the story and the characters you meet along the way, those are much more, if those are very, very rich, you get a much better experience. But multiplayer games don't necessarily have to lean on that so much, I would say. In terms of the experience. So again, this is where Ocarina is a good example from what Turbo said, in that it did go and expand everything pretty drastically with that game. Nobody knew what was going to happen in that game at all.
And the fact, and again, like Turbo said, he's still discovering new things. You've still got people that have been playing the game and speedrunning the game for years. They're still discovering like very minor things, but they're still discovering things.
Yeah, it's again another factor when seeing these kind of like games from a much bigger perspective, is that all the different kind of like players who play the game, and of course it's always the speedrunners that always have the more interesting kind of like outlook on those games, and of course Ocarina of Time being a big speedrun game for that community and whatnot, and they always see new things or try out new things. I mean, I think what was it? Recent Times for it only got like really cut down the kind of like length of a run just by a few little tweaks here and there of how to go through it, and it's interesting how that goes. And that's just another factor. But overall, I just find the world of Ocarina of Time very engaging and very interesting, and it was the first kind of, it was effectively a cinematic feel to the series. Not that there wasn't story to begin with previous entries. I mean, Link to a lot of older school Legend of Zelda fans will say that Link to the Past is obviously the be all to end all when it comes to like story, gameplay, atmosphere, and all that whatnot. But I really, in my personal opinion, I thought that Ocarina of Time did do that more by expanding more on the Triforce, expanding more on the sages, the different races that you can have that were developed in that entry in Ocarina of Time, and the different kind of like methods, puzzles, combat, all that. I feel as though they obviously did a really good first effort when it came to taking Zelda from the 2D into 3D, and that's why it still remains as one of my favorite games of all time.
As a quick one, Turbo, excuse me. Is there like a favorite moment that you have in Ocarina? Is there something when Ocarina comes up you always think of, that's my favorite, fight, or my favorite moment? Or
probably the one that sticks out the most would have to have been doing the that first trek as young Link, going through Kakariko Village or Kakariko Forest, whatever, talking to the different Kokiri there, going into Great Deku Tree and doing the first boss and taking out Goma. I think it was Goma.
It's Goma, yeah.
It's Goma.
In the first fight, and I thought that was a really good kind of like first introduction to the game and whatnot. Going, just interacting with the different characters, doing the little quests, getting your sword, getting your shield, going in, taking on your first threat and whatnot, and then you start off on your great grand adventure with I wouldn't say a sorrowful goodbye from your at then best friend.
The Saria goodbye.
Yeah,
does get you a little bit, doesn't it? Because it's like, she knows.
Yeah, and then it's expanded on later on in the game as well of what her role is in Link's kind of like journey.
Technically, they lose each other twice, if you think about it. It's one of those Zelda little stabs to the heart that they love to do.
Which they haven't stopped doing.
No,
even to the most recent entry, they haven't stopped doing that.
But yeah, that first step from being just a boy to becoming a hero.
Also, another thing that I always loved was the big Goron sword quest. That was like, it was a long, expanded kind of like thing of little odd jobs doing that instead. But once you're done, oh by God, you get a great reward out of it.
Out of interest, Turbo, was it your first Zelda?
No, my first Zelda was actually Link's Awakening.
Okay.
On the Game Boy.
Link's Awakening.
Yeah. And even though that was my first one, and I did enjoy it, it doesn't have the lasting appeal and replayability I have with Ocarina of Time.
Have you taken on the remake? I
have taken on the remake. But again, I was just like, I love Ocarina of Time more. It's just like,
isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that even with the modern polish, it still doesn't quite measure up. So that speaks hard.
Even though no knock on Link's Awakening remake for Switch or whatever, it's really good. It's definitely a really good game to kind of like play. But I just have more an affinity for Ocarina of Time more than it, because I've played that more as time, especially with the GameCube re-release that they did for the collector's disc, and the 3D remake for the 3DS. I've just played those versions more than I have Link's Awakening. So
It's a good choice. I think you'll have a lot of support for that one.
Did anybody else have Ocarina on their list?
No. If I was going to pick one, I would pick Majora's Mask over Ocarina of Time, personally.
I would have probably picked Breath of the Wild, but that's only because that's the only other one I've played properly. So that's a small list. But the older Zeldas are things I would like to get around to.
I mean, I think there is no Zelda on my list. My favourite Zelda is probably Wind Waker, but that might be nostalgia talking because Wind Waker was the first one I played. But I did get the Ocarina of Time disc with it, so that's when I first played Ocarina of Time as well.
And with that one, you also had the Master Quest version, which I've only played once over myself, but that would be something I want to replay again to see if I can get better at the Master Quest version.
This is Radio Redux.
ShadowFox.
That was neat. You know what, I will deviate from my list a little bit, partially because it's a little bit more fitting as you were talking about sort of games, large games, exploration-y games that changed a franchise. As far as games that I go back to, one of the ones that I always end up finding myself going back to is Fallout 3.
It's a good one.
It's like I said, it was the deviation from the isometric view, handing over to Bethesda and going into a first-person style. It was a hard toss-up between that and New Vegas. New Vegas, obviously by Obsidian, the original guys, and I think that the story is more interesting in that one, but I occasionally find that there's a little too much to sit down and play with and get properly invested with. Like when I'm playing Fallout 3, that's the kind of game where I can sit down and I can become the character I'm playing. I can sort of put myself in their shoes better and react to the world as how I want to react and experience it. And the fact that it's so simple, like I've done many challenge runs on that game before. I've gone around to acquire every like landmark you can get, even though some of them are designed to not really be possible. I've tried performing all factions, seeing the interactions, and like you were saying, like with a game that's too big, Fallout 3 I think hits the sweet spot in that if you see something, there's usually something to do there. Like you can go, like there are towns you have no reason to go to, but if you do, you get a nice little storyline. You might end up running up and meeting the like the cannibal town, for example. Like the only reason you might go there is because some lady in a town somewhere says, "Oh, my husband was doing a thing to deliver something over here and he hasn't come back. He's probably either dead or gone off with some hussy." And you can only find that out by and it's not a quest. It's not an actual like, here's a marker, go north, go to the thing. It's just, why not explore up there? Let's see what's up there. And the fact that there's just like an entire plethora of ways to play it. Like, do you want to go big guns, small guns, melee? Do you want to be sneaky? Do you want to be able to lockpick everything? Do you want to be able to hack everything? You can have robot buddies. It's just one of those ones where I've been able to, like, I think I've played it, gone through it maybe a dozen or so times. It's usually one I pick up once a year, when I just want to, I'll say, disappear from the world for a bit.
That's impressive, because it's not a small game.
It's not a small game, and it's, I think maybe like partially is like deep ingrained in my brain somewhere is all the memories of how to do the things. And sometimes not even things you would expect. Like I say, like, and you have like, and the results aren't always what you expect. Sometimes the like, there's a great quest where it's like, oh, there's a really fancy posh hotel, 10-penny tower, and it's like, well, this guy was like, can we get Megaton? You know, it's ruining the view. Can we move them? To which one of the guys is like, well, there's a nuke there, I'll just blow that up and clear the town off the map.
Oh, I remember that mission.
It's basically one of the first missions you encounter, because Megaton is the first place you go to and the guy is there.
No, I found that one really late, because the way I explored the map was...
You didn't go to Megaton first.
No, I did go Megaton first, but then I wandered off somewhere else.
No,
but because the thing I like, and I did this with Skyrim too, was when I was... Because you can fast travel, but when I was first exploring the map, and it's like, I'm going in this direction, and I don't know what's over there, sod it, I'm just going to walk there, and any point of interest on the way, I'm going to go there, so I've got another fast travel point on the way.
Yeah, it's like the amount of times like you wander around, and then you kind of go, well, actually, I'm going here, but if I just travel a little bit off in this direction, I can see there's a town, and that'll allow me to get back here faster next time.
Well, it's also just like, and this is a save point for me, so I can go back to Megaton, heal up, then get back there and start doing the rest of the journey. Or, I might discover new weapons or fun stuff there.
Yeah, that's things like the choo-choo rifle that makes a little 2D noise when you fire the train honking when you go fast.
I don't remember that one.
It's the railway spy gun. It's quite entertaining because you impale people to the wall with it.
I know I think I got 1000G on that on the Xbox. I can't remember. I know I 100%ed Skyrim on the PlayStation.
Dear God, why?
Yeah.
Only the base version, so it wasn't that bad.
I was saying you've got 12 other versions of Skyrim to 100% now.
No, this was the PS3 version I 100%ed without any DLC.
3 versions of Skyrim.
I've done it so many times. Like initially, the game had that moment where it's like it's the end of the game, and you are fought. Like it was a exploration game which had an end, which was like why, and it was so hilarious, the reasoning. It was like, well, you're the super mutant, my buddy Forks here. You can go in there without any harm. And he's like, no, my friend. We must not we must not betray fate. Your destiny lies in the chamber. And it's like, oh, go fuck yourself, for.
No, I remember that.
Which was it was for the DLC afterwards. Opened it up. It was like,
Forks, just go in there.
Yeah, as dumb as it was.
The other big mission I remember is the one where you go into that. You go into like pods and go into a virtual town where the scientist is trying to screw with everyone.
Yeah, the German scientist who's the little girl. I'm just saying, there's always fun, and there's always a little fun story. Like all the vaults are their own self-contained weird stories because they're all science experiments for what do people do in isolation. It's like, are you willing to kill your overseer each year to continue living?
And then find out it was a joke. If you didn't do it, it was fine.
And it's like, everyone here is named Gary. Gary.
Isn't that they clone him or something? I watched a video on like the worst vault experiments ever recently. So no, it's a nice game. I don't know. I agree. I don't know whether I prefer that or New Vegas.
Yeah,
because they've both got strong points.
They've both got strong points. I would rate the New Vegas storyline and the DLCs above, but the gameplay was a little bit buggier. All the different ammo types for guns as well. There was a lot more juggling, which in ways is fun if you want to get immersed more, but also it's like if you just want to sit back and chill, 3 is my preferred version.
I've never played a Fallout game.
Have you not?
Same here.
Somebody's played one on my system, but it's and I think on my account, but I've actually never played a Fallout game.
1 and 2 are very different to 3 and 4. I
Indeed.
think my recommendation would be start off with 3.
If I was to do anything, I would do 3 or New Vegas.
I would start with 3 because New Vegas is very much meant for Fallout 3 players to continue on. I think. Would you agree, ShadowFox?
Like Vegas has a whole lot more to it. Like if you pick up 3 and you like 3 and you want more, you'll want New Vegas. But again, you're gonna want to do the whole like fan-made modding to fix the bugs and the patches and all that stuff and adjust the UI for like whatever. So yeah,
they're quite old games now.
They are old games, but it means that the mod support has pretty much been like, because the game hasn't had any updates. The patches for it are solid.
It just works so long as you fix it.
Yeah. Bethesda's strategy: make a game, you guys fix it. Cool.
It's not a strategy; it's a musical.
It's a tragedy.
Never miss a show. Subscribe to Radio Redux now on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and all major podcast platforms.